There were two challenges in particular that played a role in shaping the American communist experience. One was the fact that, to begin with, the party was often identified with immigrants. The communities that had come over across the Atlantic from Europe often had strong socialist contingents. And when this break happens within the socialist movement between radical socialists and more moderate socialists, there were fiery individuals who saw the opportunity to help shape the American communist movement. But the result was that for many American workers, they saw the sheer ethnic variety and difference of this movement as something that was unfamiliar.
Now let us jump continents and in the 20th century, look to North America. So you also have lectured about communism in America, the different communist movements in America. It was also founded in 1919 and evolved through a couple of Red Scares. So what was the evolution of the Communist Party and just in general, communists in America?
Well, it's fascinating to observe this story because one longstanding commonplace had been that socialism has less purchase or radical socialism in the United States than in European countries. So to the extent that that was true, it was an uphill battle for the communists to get established in the United States. But it makes it all the more interesting to follow the development of the movement. And there were two challenges in particular that played a role in shaping the American communist experience. One was the fact that, to begin with, the party was often identified with immigrants. The communities that had come over across the Atlantic from Europe often had strong socialist contingents. And when this break happens within the socialist movement between radical socialists and more moderate socialists, there were fiery individuals who saw the opportunity to help shape the American communist movement. But the result was that for many American workers, they saw the sheer ethnic variety and difference of this movement as something that was unfamiliar. It would only be with the rise to the leadership of the Communist Party of Earl Browder, a American-born political leader with vast ambitions for creating an American communist movement, that image would start to be modified. Earl Browder had a meteoric rise and then fall over the promise he made that went by the slogan, "Communism is 20th century Americanism." The notion was that communism could find roots in American political discourse and experience. Where Earl Browder fell afoul of other communists was in his expectations during World War II that it might be possible for the Soviet Union and the United States to make their current cooperation permanent and to come to some sort of accommodation that would moderate their rivalry. As it turns out, with the dawning already of Cold War tensions that would later flower more fully, that was unacceptable, and the movement divested itself of Earl Browder. Another point that shaped American perceptions of the communist movement in the United States involved issues of espionage. During the 1930s and the 1940s, American communists, not all of them, obviously, but select members of the movement were called upon by Soviet intelligence to play a historical role by gathering information, winning sympathies. One of the most amazing books of the 20th century is the book written by Whittaker Chambers, who had served as a Soviet spy, first a committed communist, then a Soviet spy, and then later a renegade from those allegiances. His book is entitled Witness in 1950, published in 1952. And it's one of the most compelling books you could ever read because it's so full of both the unique character of the author in all of his idiosyncrasies and a sense of huge issues being at stake, ones upon which the future of humanity turns. So talk about the ethical element being of importance there. Through the apparatus of the state, the Soviets managed to infiltrate spies into America's military as well as government institutions. One great irony is that when Senator McCarthy in the 50s made vast claims about communist infiltration of the government apparatus, claims that he was unable to substantiate with details, that reality had actually been closer to the reality of the 1930s and the 1940s than his own time. But the association of American communists with the foreign power of the Soviet Union and ultimately an adherence to its interests did a lot to undermine any kind of hearing for American communists. An example, of course, was the notorious Nazi-Soviet pact in 1939. The American communist movement found itself forced to turn on a dime in its propaganda. Before the Nazi-Soviet pact of August 1939, they had denounced Nazi Germany as the greatest threat to world peace. Just after the signing of the pact, they had to proclaim that this was a great win for peace and for human harmony, and to completely change their earlier relationship of being mortal enemies with Nazi Germany. There were many American communists who couldn't stomach this and who, in disillusionment, simply quit their party memberships or drifted away. But it's a fascinating story of the ups and downs of a political movement with radical ambitions in American political history.
Yeah, the Cold War and the extensive levels of espionage sort of created, combined with Hollywood, created basically firmly solidified communism as the enemy of the American ideal. Sort of embodied. And not even the economic policies of the political policies of communism, but like the word and the color red with a hammer and sickle. Rocky IV, one of my favorite movies.
Well, that's canonical, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a bit of a meme, but meme becomes reality, and and then enters politics and is used by politicians to do all kinds of name calling.